In this video we're going to be talking about how to multiply and divide fractions. Now the first thing you've got to say is you do not make the denominators or the bottom numbers the same. Okay, you don't do it the same way as adding and subtracting, and that's the biggest mistake that people make. Okay, you do not need to make the denominators the same. Okay, now multiplying is the easiest one out of all four. Okay, so all you have to do with multiplying is multiply the top numbers or the numerators and multiply the denominators together. So 5 times by 1 would give you 5. 8 times 2 gives you 16. Okay, you can see if it simplifies, but it doesn't because there's nothing that goes into 5 and 16, and that is the final answer. Okay, they're the nicest ones. EG2, so it's slightly harder just because we've got these mixed numbers. Now the first thing you have to do is make them top heavy, okay, or improper if you like to have the proper word for it. Okay, so to make them top heavy or improper, we do the large number at the front multiplied with the denominator. So 1 times by 2, which is 2, and then we add the number that's on top of the fraction. So 2 plus 1 gives you 3. So the first fraction is actually 3 over 2. Okay, I'm going to keep the multiply sign, but same thing for this one. So 3 times by 5 is 15. 15 plus 4 gives you 19, and that's over 5. Okay, and then we do the same thing as before. So we multiply the top numbers or the numerators, and we multiply the denominators together. So we're going to get 57 over 10. Okay, now depending on the question, if it doesn't specify which one they want, you can just leave it as that. But for good practice, I'm going to write it as a mixed number. So how many 10s go fully into 57? That would be 5, because 5 times 10 gives you 50. But we've got 7 left over, so it would be 5 and 7 tenths. Okay. Now on to dividing. Now people do this in different ways. I use a method called KFC. Okay, so KFC. Okay, so K stands for you keep, F stands for flip, and C stands for cross. Okay, so the first part we do is we do the keep. So that means that we keep the first fraction as it is. Okay, so that's the keep part. The flip part is that we flip the second fraction over. So rather than being 5 over 14, it now has become 14 over 5. Okay, and then the cross, that's the flip. The cross, we're changing that divide sign with a multiply sign, which looks like a cross. Okay, and then we can multiply them together. So 3 times 14 is 42. 7 times 5 is 35. Okay, now 7 goes into both of those, so I'm going to divide both by 7. Which gives us 6 over 5. Okay, now again we could write it as a mixed number, so 5's into 6 would be 1 whole, and then there'd be 1 left over. Okay, so it could be 6 over 5 or 1 and 1/5. Okay, the biggest mistake people make is they don't give it in a mixed number when the question says give it as a mixed number, so just make sure you read the question correctly. Okay, so I'm going to do similar thing here with EG4. So again, we need to start off with making it top heavy before we can actually divide them. So top heavy, so 1 multiplied with the 5 gives you 5. Add the 4 on top, so that's 9 over 5. Okay, divided by 2 times 2, which gives you 4, plus the 1, which gives you 5. Okay, then we can do the KFC bit. So K is for keep, so we're going to keep it as 9 over 5. F is for flip, so we're going to flip it over. And C is for cross. Okay, now you can simplify things if they do simplify. This one doesn't at the moment. I might do one more example, so that you can see that you can actually cancel them before you multiply or divide. Okay, so then we can just multiply them together. So multiply 9 and 2 and 5 and 5. And we would get 18 over 25, which doesn't simplify. Okay, we can't make it a mixed number because the number on the top is smaller than the number on the bottom. Okay, I'm just going to do one more example. If I move it along a little bit. So let's make it 3 over 7 divided by 9 over 11. Okay, so I'm going to do the KFC to start off with. So keep the first one, so keep it as 3 over 7. Flip the second fraction, so that'll become 11 over 9. And cross, that means it's going to become a multiply rather than a divide. Now at this point, before we actually multiply them, we can simplify it. So if we look at just the 3 and the 9 to start off with, you can divide both of those by 3. Okay, so because when we're obviously, these are fractions, these lines just mean divide. So it means you can do one thing to the top and the bottom, which is what we do when we're simplifying them. So because 3 goes into both of those, if I divide them both by 3, I'll now have 1 there, and I'll now have a 3 there instead. So the new fractions will actually now be this, okay? And then you can then multiply it like normal. Now the reason why we do this is just because it makes it slightly smaller numbers, especially if these normally are non-calculator, okay? But if you're happy with not doing that and you're happy with maybe getting some bigger numbers, just stick with the normal method of just multiplying them, okay? But I know some people who find maths quite easy, they might want to know that trick, that you can simplify them. So as long as it's one from the top and one from the bottom. It wouldn't normally be on the same fraction though, that's the only thing, because normally you would simplify it before you would even do the KFC bit. So normally it would be opposites, but as long as it's one from the top and one from the bottom. So for this one here, we couldn't have simplified the 5 and the 5 because they were both the denominators, the bottom numbers. Okay, so it's just remembering that rule.